The Golden Boys, known to every Brummie and thousands of visitors to the city. This iconic tribute to Birmingham's industrial past has come to represent the city to the wider world. Like many other city landmarks, it was the work of a now almost forgotten sculptor, William Bloye. Born in the city in 1890, Bloye was the most prolific public sculptor of the first half of the 20th century, and today more than 50 of his works can be seen throughout the city. Trained at Birmingham Municipal School of Art, Bloye's subsequent studies at the Royal Academy were interrupted by service in the Royal Medical Corps in France, before he returned to teach at the Central School of Art in Margaret Street. He worked in the modernistic style made famous by Eric Gill, one of his mentors.
Bloye produced both traditional three-dimensional naturalistic works of art in his sculpture, but he also absorbed a lot of the style of modernism that was developing in British art in the 1920s and 30s, and essentially by doing this, he brought modernism to the streets of Birmingham through his sculpture.
At the time, Birmingham had big architectural ambitions. A major civic quarter of grand modern buildings was planned on reclaimed land near the modern Centenary Square. But with the financial crisis of the 1920s, little was actually built. The only echoes of this ground plan are Baskerville House and the Hall of Memory, where some of Bloye's best work can be found.
One of Bloye's most significant works in Birmingham are the series of sculptures that he produced for our Hall of Memory in 1925. Less than a decade after serving himself in the First World War, Bloye is then producing sculptures for Birmingham's own Hall of Memory.
These works capture both the city's pride and grief in a series of panels. The first, The Call, depicts a wife saying farewell as her husband joins other Brummies proudly going to war. By the second panel, the bleak despair of the trenches is clear. Finally, the aftermath of the conflict is represented as 35,000 wounded and crippled Brummies return to the city. Major commissions such as this meant that Bloye became a popular public sculptor.
What's brilliant about Bloye and having an interest in Bloye is that if you want to see examples of his sculpture around Birmingham, literally all you need to do is to just take a walk around the city centre and have a look. If you visit Waterloo Street in Birmingham city centre, there are two examples of his work. The first is a series of sculptures on the outside of the Legal and General Assurance building. The second are two figures on the entranceway to New Oxford House in Waterloo Street, which are incredibly stylised examples of his work, which show the influence of Art Deco and also Egyptian art. Just around the corner, if you go down Bennett's Hill, you can see a beautiful stylised sun on the outside of the Sun Assurance building.
Beyond the city centre, Bloye's sculpture is known to every student at the University of Birmingham. This exuberant figure of the mermaid from the university crest greets every visitor to the Student Guild. The motif is also repeated on the building's frieze.
In 1954, Bloye produced an incredibly stylised frieze for the outside of the mechanical and electrical engineering buildings at the University of Birmingham. They show young students actually learning from their tutor with a series of instruments, and are again one of those great examples of Bloye's work that show the influence of Eric Gill and also of modernism.
Yet surprisingly, the work for which Bloye, who died in 1975, is now best remembered, does not reflect his usual modernistic style.
The statue of Bolton, Watt and Murdock is possibly Bloye's greatest known work in the city centre. It's highly naturalistic, it divides opinion because it's very gold and it's very shiny, so some people love it and some people hate it. But in many ways, it can't be seen as representative of Bloye's work. He really did bring modernism to Birmingham in his sculpture, and I think it's really important that we bring it to a much wider audience.
You can learn more about William Bloye on the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography website. You can access the resource free of charge using your local library's subscription.